Mr. Simpson, thank you so much for coming on the show. Let's get started with, would you mind sharing how you came to your faith in Christ?
A little later in life, in 1982, I was in the restaurant business. I owned 6 restaurants, and it was a difficult time because these are financed and interest rates are extremely high. And it got to a point where I just couldn't do that. So I had to went into a bankruptcy. And but in the course of that, I always thought that it was me who was being successful. I'd been successful in the restaurant business, and even owning my own restaurants was a pretty neat deal. As a kid at 34 years old to have owned 6 restaurants, I thought that was a pretty neat deal. Well, but that took me to my knees. And so it was a situation where I came home to my wife and I just kind of broke down, and I said, Susie, I just can't do this. And so we talked, and I really turned it all over to the Lord at that point. So I said, Jesus, you got to come and take this away from me. I have always been trying to do this and never giving you the credit for doing it. And the most amazing thing happened. The peace that I had when I let Christ take charge of me as opposed to me trying to do it, my life just turned around. I had a peace about moving forward with losing the restaurants. Friend called me up and he said, we'd already, the year before that, we'd started catering from the restaurants. I own a company called Kansas City Catering now. And we started catering from the restaurants just to try to bring extra revenue in to the restaurants. But as this whole thing was progressing, it seemed like the restaurant business was coming to an end and I needed to do something else. That's kind of the way I looked at that. But after I let Christ take charge of this, and after I moved forward at that point, I had a friend of mine, actually was my biggest creditor. He sent me a flyer of a catering kitchen that it was on the market. And he said, you ought to go look at this. And so I went and looked at it, and it just kind of blew me away because I thought, I don't know, there's no way I can afford this. And then I looked at a couple other catering facilities that were on the market, and they were actual catering businesses that people wanted to sell, and they were not in very good shape. So this was a kitchen, a 4,000 square foot kitchen that a company called W.R. Grace out of California had built for their Midwest restaurants. And it was Coco's, Baxter's, Reuben's, Sundays. Those were the restaurants. And this was going to be this was going to be one of their 6 or 7 kitchens across the country that they'd leased similar space. And they were going to service those restaurants from these kitchens. In other words, they were going to make a lot of the product in these kitchens, send it out to maybe 30, 40 restaurants from these kitchens. So it'd be more uniform. Restaurants didn't have to make it, basically. Before this kitchen ever opened, they decided to go central commissary. So this is a facility that was sitting completely quarry tile floors, stainless steel on the walls, stainless hood systems in it, sinks, tables, everything, just sitting there. And that's why I said I didn't think, when I looked at it, that I could afford it. So the realtor said, why don't you talk to them and why don't you think about this? Why don't you give them a reverse situation where you pay them so much right now, and then as the lease continues, you pay them more each year as you build your business. So that's what I did. I offered them $1,000 a month for rent. And in the last year of the lease, we were somewhere around $4,000 a month in rent. But the percentage at $4,000 was less than it was at $1,000 because we had built our business. So they let us build our business up first. So, but I looked at the walk-in freezer. We got 1,200 square feet of refrigeration. I thought, I'm going to have to block off half of this space. I can't afford the electric bill just to keep these things going. But it was amazing. We lost money the first 6 months, and we're a 40-year-old company, and we've never lost money since then. So it's been a very successful business, and we built it from scratch. But each step along the way, I gave the Lord credit now for what I was being asked, what I was doing. I wasn't doing it. I was doing it with Christ there at my side. And so there's a big difference. And the burden that was lifted off of me it never bothered me that we had to build this business. It never bothered me when I was in tough situations. So it was just it was a pretty remarkable thing. I mean, that's the whole journey, getting through that bankruptcy, getting into this company, into this facility. And then it took us 10 years to pay back all of our creditors. So that was a goal that we had going in. In other words, a lot of people go through bankruptcies, and I was sat there and the judge said, "You're exonerated from all your debts." Well, I wasn't really exonerated. And I felt the responsibility. These people had lent me money, or sold me product, I should say. I couldn't pay the bill. So I still owed them the money, the way I looked at it.
So you didn't have to pay it back, according to the judge?
According to the judge.
But you still paid it back anyways?
I was exonerated, yeah.
Wow.
And I think that's part of the reason that Kansas City Catering has continued to be successful, is the way we established it, who we gave credit to now, as opposed to me taking credit. We gave credit to Christ. And, but yeah, it was tough. It was tough, 10 years. So
when you experienced that tough time where you were going to go bankrupt, why did you feel that you needed to turn to Christ as opposed to other things?
We'd gone to church. Susie and I had always gone to church. So.
Were you raised in the church?
Well, my mother was a Christian Scientist, and so we really weren't raised in a Christian church. But it never took with me. It did take with my older brother, but I never got into that. So until I got married, which was at 24 years old, I had never really attended church on a regular basis. And so then we started attending Methodist church, and we became youth sponsors and all kinds of stuff. But it was just that, and my wife is a very solid person. So it wasn't like she didn't tell me things, but I wasn't responding to them. So
what type of church did you get raised in again? What was it called again?
Christian Scientist.
Christian Scientist. What is that?
Well, they have one book called Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. So she has done an interpretation of the Bible. So if you went to church there, what they do is they have a reader that reads from Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, and then they have another person that reads from the Bible. And so it's kind of like an interpretation, but it's her interpretation of what the Bible is.
Who's her?
Mary Baker Eddy.
So this is the founder of the religion?
The founder of it, yeah. Just like this Mormon church has had a founder. Similar kind of thing.
Joseph Smith.
Yeah. So, and he had an interpretation too of
right.
how things should be. Well, that's really what that was. And so
never knew that.
It was different.
Yeah. Well, sounds different.
I didn't take on it. So it was something that, but I just, each step along the way, Susie and I talked, but I was always thinking that if I worked harder and I did more, I could fix the problem. It was always me trying to fix it, as opposed to having Christ with me to take care of that. And so it was just a burden that I carried all the time. Because, as I went through difficult times, it was always me doing it. I was involved in the difficult time. I didn't look that Christ was with me, or, I didn't look at any of those kind of things. So it's only when I really accepted Christ, and I say that's the time that I really accepted Christ. I thought I had accepted Christ before that. But this is really what I consider the time that I actually did that, because I let him take control of my life.
Right.
So that was the difference in that particular time.
Do you remember when the gospel was shared with you?
Yeah, my wife has shared it with me. I've had other pastors share it with me. And I accepted Christ, but I never let Christ take control. So I think a lot of people do that, to be honest with you. I think a lot of people, they want to be Christians, and so the message is shared with them, they accept it, but they never truly let Christ take control of their life. They think they're in control. I thought I was in control. So I can't remember the exact time frame.
Yeah.
We were going to the Methodist Church, and I'm sure that was a time frame. In Kansas City, it was 73, 74 in that time frame that I probably accepted Christ, but it wasn't until 83 that I truly let him take charge of my life. So I think a lot of people put themselves in that similar kind of situation. I think they, and I think guys in business in particular. I mean, you built a business here. Mm-hmm. And, you had to come to the realization that as good as you are and as talented as you are, this business wasn't built because of that. It was built because Christ worked in you to accomplish these things. And when you have that feeling in you, you share that with every student here. And I share it with employees. When we would go out and work jobs, people would see that in the attitude that we had, how we worked with people, how we worked with our employees. And it just made a huge difference. Mm. So that's kind of how that started.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I would say my story is similar. I've always had I knew about the gospel even as a child, but it's not until you fully submit do you really dive into what is meant for you.
Yeah.
And getting on the path of not righteousness, but really, really trying to follow Christ in every single facet of your life. Mm-hmm. So tell me more about KC Catering.
Well, Kansas City Catering, we're a full-service off-premise catering company. When we started, we did anything and everything. So any way we could find business, we found business. So we did box lunch for prisoners that came back from Europe on buses. I knew a guy that owned a bus company, and they transported prisoners. They come in, they fly to KCI, they go to Fort Leavenworth, they go out to Fort Riley. These are military prisoners. So we do box lunches for them. I had a friend that owned a couple railroad cars. And so they did a FAM trip, which out of Kansas City, and we started down in Norfolk and Southern Rail Yard. And they had like 10 cars and 3 or 4 dome cars. And so people bought tickets to go on the train. We did all the food on the train. Mm. So you could either buy a ticket, which would be, regular class, which we were in a boxcar then doing concessions, and they were in kind of like a bench kind of seats in the train. Or you could be first class, which you were in dome cars, and we had kind of like butler service there. I mean, anything you wanted to eat was free because you'd paid for the ticket to be in that car. So that was kind of fun. And then we did some catering for some down at downtown airport. Commercial flights would come in, and they'd have catered meals that they'd pick up and take. So we did a little bit of that kind of stuff. We had met another guy. He owned a concession company. They had to have sandwiches in their machines. So we got into the sandwich business, and I bought all this equipment to seal the sandwiches and do all that. And we, each one of these things we kind of outgrew as a company, because each one of them was kind of I thought they were fun, but they weren't very profitable. and my office manager, she's a numbers person. She's a CPA. And so she'd always like, we need to kind of get out of this kind of business. And so
you're more the visionary.
Yeah. So,
the big ideas.
But you had to be doing some business.
Of course.
You had these employees. And
I have to ask, how'd you get all that business in the beginning? What did that look like? I mean, you got a variety of different prisons and boxcars.
It's it's going out and knocking on a lot of doors. And we did do some advertising in the Yellow Pages at one time. We don't anymore. But then we went through churches. We talked to different groups at churches. We looked for any group, anybody that was in a situation where they would go to a banquet.
And you'd be going and talking to them?
We talked to them, yes.
Was it you or was it other?
No, it was me. Oh, no, it
was you the whole time.
I was gone all the time doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'd come back and have to help the chef cook it because somebody had to do that too. And then I would go work the jobs. So, I mean, I had other people doing some of these things,
Sure.
but we were a tight group of 4 to begin with. And then we had about 6 people. Everybody wore all the same hats. So you had to do everything here. We just we weren't making the kind of money where I could afford to have other people doing everything for me. So it was about a 65, 70-hour work week, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
My wife she was really on the home front because I wasn't there. Now she'd call me and say, the girls have something going on today. And so I would show up, see what they had going on, go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when I said I was working, I really, truly was always working. I wasn't out with the guys doing something else I shouldn't be doing. So Susie never worried about that, from me, because I was building a business. And each step along the way, as we felt that particular kind of business, we needed to move on to something else, we did. And as we got different kinds of customers, and every venue in Kansas City, and that's where you go, because if you're doing an event, wedding reception, or any kind of other thing, you're going to some kind of venue to do that event.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're in a hotel, they do their own food. But if you go to any of the one of maybe 100 facilities in Kansas City to do an event, they have an approved list of caterers. So you start calling on all these venues, and then you start trying to get into those venues. So, we had to know our competition. We had to know how we were going to get into those venues, because I just wanted a shot at it. So, everything from giving the venue a piece of the action to let us in the door so they could see how we did events as opposed to all the other people that maybe were coming in there. But we had all kinds of things we had to, and so it was getting to know people. And so it's a people business. And then once we got in the venue, then people could compare us to other people. And then that's really where I wanted to be. I said, give me a shot. And then
hold on, you wanted to be compared to others.
Oh, totally.
Why is that?
We felt we did a better job. We felt that our food was better. We felt our staff did a better job. When we went into a facility, there's a set of rules. People always had their rules. We want to see, you can do this, this, and this. You can't use our kitchen. You can't use our kitchen. We always see it clean when you're done. You take out the trash. You do it. So we followed all the rules. And you soon find out that other people working in those facilities really weren't very good rule followers, or they didn't do as good a job as we did. So when we left, our goal was always to leave it cleaner than we found it. So, if we were in your facility here, as an example, and you let me use this facility for whatever else I wanted to do, and you came in the next day, I wanted you to be really shocked at how clean this was, and you never knew I was even in there.
Imagine that. I mean, for some reason, that's a rare idea nowadays, it seems.
It's a very rare idea. And even to this day.
Yeah.
Even to this day, but anyway, so it's a lot of going out and talking to a lot of people. I mean, that's really what I did. I talked to a lot of people.
Boots on the ground, get on the phone, just numbers.
And what's changed is with the salespeople I have, they want to email and text people.
That's right.
And I want to get to know you person first. Once I talk to you on the phone, and then the next thing I really want to do is I want to come out here and meet you.
That's right.
I just want to meet you. And once I do that, texting and emailing is great. It's the most wonderful tool to use, but it's just not the way I was ever trained or the way that I felt needed to be done. And it's a more personal thing.
Yep.
So once I can touch you, and you can see me, you can see I'm really genuine,
Yep.
then I might have a better shot at doing things with you. So we worked at all these different things. We had a chance to do our first convention in 86. So we started in 83. Our first convention was 86. It was a hardware store, a hardware chain, and they were doing an event in Bartle Hall. And so that was our first event of any size. And I say that, it was probably 700-800 people. And that scared me at that time because I had not done things. Usually we're in the 100, maybe 200 people range. But it's just having a little more equipment, a few more people. Exponentially, you have more buffets. You have to cook more food. And so it's having to do all those things on a little bigger scale. And then from there, we worked. It's real hard to get into that market because corporate clients, they're not ask a lot of questions. They don't ask a lot of questions. They expect you to know the answers. I mean, they expect you to know what to do already.
Mm-hmm.
So they're talking to you, and you better know. I better know what you want me to do before you even ask me what, because I got to answer the questions right, and I got to start showing you that we can do this event for you. So we worked really hard to get into the convention market, and it took us a number of years. And that is where we are right now. Most of our business now, our big business, is all at Bartle Hall. It's the convention business, and these are conventions that are in the 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people range. And they have multiple meals, and so we got one in June that's 3 weeks long. And so it's 2,500 people, but it's 5 meals a day. Now we split that with our biggest competitor because it's about 90,000 meals now. So we have about 45,000 of them, and they do too. But that's 3 weeks. We do one in July that's it's 56,000 meals, but it's only in 4 days. So it's more people. It's 5,700 people.
That's a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts.
Wow.
And so you have to plan the correct meal to do, first of all, for that group.
What about like gluten-free? Do you have to deal with that too?
Not probably
special requests.
Not probably for that kind of group, but yes, we always do that. Yeah, we've always got a certain group of people that have gluten or vegan or whatever. We always have special requests, and so we always honor that. And so, any time we make a presentation, if we were doing an event for you, we would also not only present a particular meal, but we would also present our gluten-free options and also our vegan options. And vegetarian options, if that takes. Vegetarian and vegan can be close to the same thing because, But it's a percentage of people, and the percentage is small, but it's generally you're trying to please people. And so is it annoying? Oh yeah. You can just imagine when you get somebody in for a special request.
Yeah.
And you're trying to feed 1,000 people and you got these 10 special requested meals. But if you screw those 10 meals up, you've really made a big problem because they're going to be very vocal people.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to be as good or better than anything else you're doing. And so we make a special deal. We got particular people that just handle that one item. So if you come, we're gonna want to know who in the room is special request, and we want to make sure that they know that all they have to do is ask a waiter or ask somebody, and we'll bring that special meal to them. So we make a big deal out of it because it's a big deal.
Sure. You know how many meals you do per year, or you did last year?
No. I know that the food we gave City Union Mission was about 56,000 meals.
Oh my goodness!
So we give City Union Mission all the food that's left over.
That's great.
So if we do an event and we do not put the food out, in other words, it's basically people just didn't eat it. We take it back to our kitchen, we repan it, and that's what the mission picks up the next day. So, but the reason that's such a big number is these big conventions, because sometimes we fix meal for large groups of people, but sometimes they don't eat as much.
Yep.
Sometimes some of them decide they're going to go eat somewhere else if they're coming in from out of town. They want to go maybe Power and Light or someplace else to have a meal. So we'll have extra food left over. So
you guys cook all of your food?
We cook about 90% of it. And I say that we do cook it all, like all our fancy pastries. We do not do any of those things. We have a pastry chef that has his own business in Kansas City, and he does all of our pastries. Our rolls come from Roma or some other good source of bread. Mm-hmm. So we don't bake any. We don't bake anything.
Sure.
If you want sheet cakes, if it's a type of event, we can do sheet cake. We do that. And so we do make a few desserts. We do brownies, we do lemon bars, we do sheet cakes, but we don't do any of our upscale desserts. It's just we couldn't match what we buy, and so they're kind of showpieces. If you could see some of these desserts, I mean, this guy's incredible baker, but it's just depending on what we're serving, we do 100% of the meal. Sometimes we do not 100% of it. But generally, we cook all the proteins, all the vegetables, and we do all the salads. So when there's other components to that, then sometimes we have somebody else do parts of it. So the main thing is once we talk about a menu, if you're buying something from me, then we look at how much of that we can supply. But really what you're wanting is a meal that we decided on.
Yeah.
And as long as my tastes are what I'm serving you, which I think I have good taste, then you're going to love the meal. You don't really care if I made 100% of that or not.
No.
And it's just a matter of, can I resource things and can it save you some money possibly because we don't have to put the labor into doing it and somebody else can actually do it cheaper than we can do it. So it's like anything. Doesn't have to mean the product's cheap. It just means that somebody's got a better way of doing it and we're using that better way.
I think that's a great idea.
To get the end result. So
how many employees do you guys have now?
We have 9 full-time. It's kind of amazing how much we get out of our kitchen because
you said 50-something thousand meals.
That's 9 full-time.
Uh-huh.
We've got a convention coming up in June. Our kitchen will swell to about 20 people, just the kitchen staff. Operations between 75 and 100 people. So we've got all those crews already hired. So we had them hired in April for something that's going to start the 26th of May.
So it's like more contract labor.
Well, it's not contract. There are employees because these are college people.
Yep.
Or we've got 250, 300 people on our call sheets. So when we have big events coming up, you get an email from us.
Sure.
And we have, there's 9 full-time employees, but I probably have another 8 employees that have full-time jobs that take vacation time to work for us because they like doing what we do and they like working with us. So these are people, some of these people work for me for longer than 10 years. So, I mean, they have full-time jobs. Or I've got a gal, she's one of the head accounting people down for the Children's Mercy Hospital. And so she's going to come in and work all of our breakfasts for this big convention. So she'll go to work for us at 5 a.m. And then her boss says she could come in an hour late. So she's going to work from 5 to about 9 o'clock in the morning for us. So she's working 4 hours every day for us. Then she's going to her full-time job.
Why? Why does she want to do that?
Well, she makes extra money.
Yeah.
And she got grandkids and she's got vacations she goes on and she's got other things she does.
But obviously she enjoys it.
And she totally enjoys it. She totally enjoys working with us.
Wow.
So, and then we have sometimes 5 and 6 weddings going on a weekend. So all these people are key components that allow us to do our business. So maybe you can only work for us on Fridays, but you might be working a wedding every Friday night if you can work Fridays.
How do you ensure consistency of the quality of service when you got all these people coming and going?
There's always supervisors on every job. Some of these people are supervisors, and then we have other staff that work for them at that job. If it's a plated meal, that generally takes 3 or 4 of what we call our key people, and then all the wait staff, they are contract labor. So just like the hotels, 80% of all the wait staff at a hotel banquet are contracted. Just like at the country clubs. Nobody can afford to have a full-time staff outside of certain numbers. So hotel might carry 6 full-time waiters. I think we got by this entire event with having 2 contract people out of all the staff that we've got. So, as soon as we put these out, because what we do is, if you're working for us at that event, we've got, if this is the first year you're working for me, it's either $15 or $16 an hour, if it's the first year. If you work so many days of this big convention, we give you an extra $1 an hour just because you're working so many days. If you work so many more days, you get $2 an hour. And so many more days, you get 3, and it goes up to $4 an hour. So, and after you've worked 1 year, then you're going to get a raise the next year. So you can always make, we call it, what do we call that? Well, it's bonus money, but.
Sure. So when the new people come in, what does it look like for them training wise?
Well.
How long does that take?
A day, maybe. The thing is, I have you doing one job.
So you're not having them do multiple things, because that's a lot of training.
You're working a beverage station.
Okay.
You're working a dessert station. You're learning how to set up a salad bar. You're a buffet runner. There might be 12 buffet runners and a couple of supervisors as well. So what that means is that you're coming from the buffet line back to our field kitchen, picking up food and taking it back to the line. That's buffet runner. So on these big events, there's 12 to 15 buffets on those huge events like that. So there's a lot of people working, and we have a kitchen staff on site. We always set a field kitchen up there. So all the food we've got all the equipment to pack the food up, send it down, and then, and it'll hold the food within 5 degrees for almost 24 hours. So it's really good equipment. So we have tons of equipment, and so that kind of what allows us to do those larger events is that we're one of maybe 4 people in town that can actually handle them. So
before this, you were mentioning that after the bankruptcy, you made a vow to not have any debt.
Yeah.
How did you grow from that mindset? Because a lot of times people, when they start a business, they'll go out, get a bank loan for whatever amount of money so they can start the business. How did you do it without debt?
We started out, and my brother lent me $10,000.
Okay.
And out of that is what we grew from.
So after the $10,000, you didn't get any more loans.
I paid him that back after the first full year, not that first 6 months, but after the first full year, which was 84. We paid him the $10,000 back. Our business is kind of, in a sense, it's got these real peaks and valleys. Well, January, February, March are normally a real big valley. Every January, February, March, if we didn't have enough cash flow, I'd call Greg, and we just called dialing for dollars. And Greg would just send me a check for $5,000, $8,000, whatever we needed to make payroll, pay our bills. We didn't miss a beat. And that lasted for 2 or 3 years. And then pretty much that stopped completely. He was paid back, and then we started to the point where we had saved enough money from September to December that we could make it through that period of time. And then it took about 5 years to where we were self-sufficient. Then we put so much money away every year to pay the creditors back. So we didn't know how much that was going to be until the end of the year, but we always earmarked so much money to go back to pay those bills. So, but I mean, there's all kinds of facets to this thing, and it's just been amazing to me. And I've seen the Lord work in so many different ways in this business. And the most recent one was COVID in 20.
How'd you guys get through that one?
We lost every bit of business. In 2 days, we had $2.25 million business cancel. That was on the books on March 12th, and it canceled. $2.25 million.
Wow.
Canceled. We had already had one of the very best ever January, February, and the first 2 weeks of March. I mean, it was going to be a record year.
Yeah.
Literally, it was going to be a record kind of year. And then we had $2.25 million cancel. And that was all the business we did the entire year was done up to the 12th of March. So we did almost nothing the entire rest of the year. I bet we didn't do $5,000 the rest of the year. And I was in the process of selling the business to my daughter and son-in-law. So I decided that I would stay around and just finance it. And they wanted to take the business over. And, through this whole process, I said, I know the Lord's got a plan here. I mean, I know he's got a plan. And I had the best attitude ever. And yet weren't doing any business at all. I mean, we walk around and it's just no different than this facility here. You walk around and say, everything's paid for here. Everything's paid for. I don't owe a dime to anybody. And we had no business. Because all your customers are gone. And there's no way you could do anything about it because they closed all our facilities. All our venues are shut down.
Right.
Groups, they weren't letting us do groups. We finally started doing a few small wedding receptions in the fall of 20. So we did 10% of our business in 20 that we'd done in 19. We did, and that was all done in the first 12, up to March 12th. Then in 21, we did 35% of our business that we did in 19.
So you didn't have that giant rebound that a lot of companies did.
Well, they still were masking everybody.
Right.
See, they were still, and you have to realize our big conventions weren't happening.
Right.
So where we really grew was in the convention market. We started doing more wedding receptions. We probably did, in 19, we probably did 25, 26 wedding receptions. Well, by 21, we'd already gotten about 40. We just didn't go after that market. The market was always there. We just chose to go get our business in different markets because the wedding market is profitable, but it's very time consuming.
I can imagine. Because, I mean, that's a once-in-a-lifetime event, and it's got to be, they want it perfect.
And they want to talk to you on the phone all the time. So you can just imagine if I called you every other day and took 20 to 30 minutes of your time, and yet you can't charge me anymore for that time because I'm not really a wedding consultant. I'm selling you food. That's really where I'm making my money. So, and then in 22, we did 115%. So it was all back by 22, but our conventions were back. So that it's completely come back. So I'm still working, but the business is going to be more of a gift to my daughter and son-in-law at this point, and it'll just come out of their inheritance. So that's all I'm going to do there, which is great.
So you got your daughter and her husband taking over the business.
Yeah, her husband's worked for me since 99.
Okay.
So Chris has been there a long time, and Chris took over as sales manager probably 8 or 9 years ago. So I relinquished that role, and so he's a great salesman. What neither one of them had much training in is how to run the business. So they could do all the jobs there except for the running of it. So that was what my office manager and I did. And so we were hoping to retire in 16. Son-in-law was going to buy it with best friend, and the best friend backed out, and it didn't work out at that time. So Rhonda and I are still there. We're still working some, but we're training them. So she works 2 days a week. I work 3 days a week.
Who's this?
My office manager.
Okay. She's been with you
She's been with me since she was 16 years old in high school. So she's worked for me in the restaurants. And then when we went into the catering company, then when I bought those restaurants, she worked for me in that.
Wow.
She ran my office then. And then she now has worked in my office for me since, so I've been married just a little longer than the time she's worked for me. So she was 16 when she started, so she still works for me. Never had another job, but she's a CPA. So her folks didn't have money to send her to school, so I sent her to college when we didn't have enough things to do, starting 6 restaurants. It just wasn't enough work for her. So sent her to college. She went to JUCO, got 2 years at JUCO. Then she went to UMKC and got her accounting degree. And the first time she sat, she passed all 5 parts of the CPA exam. So she's a smart lady. Very smart.
Sounds like it.
But I tell people, I give her the credit that we're profitable because I was always the spender.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would never worry when I went on vacation because I knew she was in charge. When she'd go on vacation, she would worry all the time what I was going to buy.
So you're like the big picture, big idea guy, maybe the spender. Then she's also more of the operations, day-to-day operations, making sure things are.
She watches every penny.
Yeah. And you need that in a business.
You have
That's
to have
so
that.
important.
Now, you can't have a CPA running the company, though.
No, because they don't have the vision.
They don't have that. And and a lot of times, accountants think differently. They're not as flexible as a salesperson is going to be.
Right.
I think a good salesperson is an ADD person because the customer loves them and they're always trying to make a deal. And so when they come back to the office, they try to convince all of us of the deal they made. And we try to, well, you can't make money doing that. And so then we have to figure out how to make money at what the deal is. And then when the salesperson writes the proposals, somebody has to look at that.
That's right.
What they're
Did you
writing.
say ADD person?
Yeah. And so Rhonda did all that. And so we had to go through and then we had to make sure that nobody sent an email out of our office that she didn't see first.
Yes.
Because that's grammar.
That's right. That's right.
And she's a proofreader.
Yep.
You get emails from people and it's like, it's horrible. I mean, people send us, they want to do a wedding reception with us. They send us stuff and it's like, oh my goodness, this is bizarre. I mean, some of the misspelling, the way it's put together.
That's today's writing.
They got $5 million to spend. Not 5,000, but 5 million.
Right.
I mean, they don't even read what they're writing.
Right.
Anyway, so everything you send out from your office is a reflection of you.
I agree.
Me or
I
the
agree.
company. And so we want to make sure it's a good reflection. So
Yes.
the customer thought the salespeople were just incredible people because the proposals came out written right. They didn't have to call them back and say, hey, I forgot to put this and this and this in the proposal.
But this is all Martha. Is her name Martha?
No, it's Rhonda.
Rhonda, sorry. This is all Rhonda that's responsible for this.
If you could see how many times a salesperson turned in a proposal to send to somebody and she corrected it. Comes back, she corrects it again. I mean, it's almost crazy, but by the time it goes out, it looks really good. And that's what I'm saying. The customers love our salespeople because they truly are people.
Yeah.
But the details aren't always as clear as they should be.
And the details are important.
Details are important in our business.
I would say it's important in any business.
Well, it is important in any business, but a lot of people don't scrutinize it like we do.
Right.
And
I would say that's probably why you have 5-star ratings on your Google profile. I checked that out and I was impressed. It was all 5 stars. I didn't find one that was not.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think it was you guys paying attention to detail. They talked about the food was really good. I mean, I would love to just start talking about restaurants because you have a restaurant background. And when I go into a restaurant, I get really a little, I don't know, it's like my business mind turns on. And I have to ask you, what makes a restaurant successful?
To me, it starts with the people. It starts with when the person approaches your table, are they friendly? Are they short? Are they attentive to you and the fact that you're in there to spend your money? And then do they come back and revisit you in a timely way? Or do they kind of leave you alone and you're thinking like, okay, I've been in here 20 minutes now and nobody's even come and talked to me again. They greeted me, but so that starts there. And then from there, it has to end up with the food, of course. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's a huge people thing. And so I'm always looking for people that are people-oriented. Because when you go in any business now, most businesses, they don't have enough staff on the floor. Hmm. You find someone you ask a question to, and they don't give you the answer. I'm not completely annoyed. I can't be annoyed. My wife, she tells me not to be annoyed with that, but I am annoyed with it. Because, I remember when you go to a gas station, you'd say, hey, I'm going through town. I don't know where this is. And they would tell you where everything in town was, all the directions. Hey, where can I go get a good lunch today? Oh, you want to go to so and such a place. You go to a gas station now, you ask them questions. They don't know anything. They don't even know that part of town. They couldn't even tell you where something is 3 blocks away because they don't know. So it's a difference in time, and things are moving faster now. But in a restaurant, I'm looking for cleanliness. I walk in, and the first thing is, do I have a good impression when I walk in?
Yeah.
So does it look organized to me? That is the bus personnel on the floor. That's the management. Do they look like they're scatterbrained? They don't know what, everybody's running around with chickens with their heads cut off.
Yep.
Or do they look like they're really organized and things are moving real efficiently? But then it's people. It comes back to people again, and it comes back to training. So, and then you want to see, what is the management doing? Is the manager standing in the back of the house? or are they out on the floor working with the staff?
And they should be on the floor.
They should be on the floor with the staff, and they should be looking for any one of a number of problems that could be potentially happening in that restaurant. So they should be picking up. They should be helping clean tables off. They should help carrying food out. They should be talking to people on the floor, and they all those things should be happening. In the end, some of that can all be happening, and the food isn't good. So
right.
you know, you have to. What I like about catering is I've got to find you as a customer, one.
Mm-hmm.
Then I've got to sell you a product. And you've got to trust me that I'm going to fix that product in a way that's going to satisfy you. Then I get to go back and we get to figure out how we're going to do that job. And a lot of times I sold things, me personally, that I didn't know how I was going to do. I'd come back with some of these jobs and I was like, oh my gosh, I just sold this thing for 300 people, but I don't know how we're going to do it. And we'd sit down, we brainstorm, we figure it out. And that's what you do in business. You know, you can say, I just got another 100 students. Yeah, I don't know, well, you can take it. But you figure out how to
figure it out.
And you think, okay, I'm going to need 2 more people or 3 more staff.
That's right.
And so that's what you do.
Yep.
But if you're not taking a risk to do that, you're just going to be in this little bubble. You're just never going to go anywhere. You're going to be in this always.
That's right.
You're going to have 50 students because that's what you can handle.
That's right.
So you have to be able to replicate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So always I'm looking for people that I can train, that I can decentralize everything at work, everything that I do. I don't want to be the only person there to do it.
Right.
I want everybody doing everything. And because when all hands are on deck, and these big things, all hands are on deck, you have to be doing a lot of different things. And so you have to know a lot of different things to be able to do. And you have to know the skill level of the people you have.
Yep.
And you have to know what you're asking people to do. But come back to the restaurant situation again.
Cleanliness, food,
people.
The people, that's really service,
Well,
right?
To me, it's always the people. Because if I came here to your facility and I wanted to learn what you're teaching, I'm a parent now or a grandparent. I want to see how you're going to work with the student. I want to see how you're taking the time to work with whatever age group is there. So I'm going to be impressed with that, or I'm going to think, I don't know about them. You know?
Yep.
And so that's just the way. But every place you go, the same problems. Same problems exist everywhere. It's just, are people conscious of what the problems are?
I mean, I hope that a lot of restaurant owners, managers are listening to this, because I know for us, my wife and I, we eat a lot of takeout. My son's autistic, so we don't get to sit in restaurants a lot. So we still want to eat out. But then when we call, I mean, you're not talking to somebody who really first is motivated in that position.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And second, they don't even know really the menu. They're not really, seems like they're not trained enough. And most importantly, it doesn't seem like they care.
That's even a bigger thing.
Yeah.
Do they care?
Right. And I don't understand how, I mean, this is money that is going to be hopefully earned by them, but it seems like they're under-resourcing that part of the restaurant of who is answering the phone and taking those orders.
You know, I wonder if the manager has ever called their own restaurant.
Right.
And ever put an order in to see how that's going to be, or had maybe somebody that sitting with them that they asked to do it because maybe the person would know their voice or something. I wonder if I ask those questions. And then when I get my to-go order, because I'm a big to-go guy, I look at the packaging. Oh my goodness. I wonder, did they ever order something themselves and take it home? And what does this look like? Because, to me, I've got places I'll go just because of the packaging.
Yes.
Am I paying more money for the packaging? Sure I am.
What about when they don't give you all your food and you come home, you drive 15, 20 minutes back home and you realize they've missed out on your wife's meal?
I have to be very careful there because I go right back to the restaurant. In fact, that happened. We ordered food for 15 people. It's Chinese food.
Sure.
I'll tell you where it was.
Yeah.
But it was so botched.
Yeah.
And if I went in there and just got 2 things for my wife and I, it's fine.
Yeah.
But I had the whole family, and there were like 6 or maybe 8 even different orders, different particular. So I get home and I had about maybe 4/5 of it at best. And so I went back and I said, the shame of it is that we chose to come here tonight and get all this food, but then, and you assured me that all the food was there when I left, because I asked those questions.
Oh, you asked?
Oh, yeah. Well, he ended up actually comping the entire thing to me. I said, well, no. You're in business. I'm not asking you to comp it.
Mm-hmm.
No, we really screwed up tonight. And I feel like we need to do this. Well, then I felt horrible. And I never used it, by the way. But I mean, and I didn't get the money back at that point.
Sure.
He gave me a card that said I had over $100 worth of free food there at his place. But I never used it because I felt horrible to use it, because it's like, you're in business to make money.
Right.
I mean, this isn't a charity thing. And I didn't mean that. It's just that I've gotten so much food that it is some of these places that I don't want them to give me free food. I'm never looking for something free. I just want better service.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to think about it. Yeah, but that annoys me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you couldn't be annoyed.
Right. Is there any restaurants that has your stamp of approval in Kansas City? Any that come to mind?
Well, there's probably a lot. Depending on what you're eating, I mean, is a competitor. Fiorella's Jack Stack is an example. Okay, I know Jack Fiorella, and so it's and yet they do a lot of catering too.
Sure.
And they take some business away from us occasionally.
Yeah.
But when I have friends come to Kansas City, I take them there to eat barbecue.
You respect their restaurant, their food.
And I know if I want to-go food, I know exactly how it's going to be packaged at that facility.
Wow, you're about the packaging. Yeah, that's the big thing for you for the takeout.
If I'm picking up barbecue to take to Royal Stadium to eat, because they let you bring it in, I want it to be where I can put this in my lap and I can eat this. And so, if you go to, I shouldn't mention names, should I?
What, restaurants that are, I mean, I would say mention the name if it's a good thing, but maybe not bad.
Okay, well, there's one that the food was good.
Yeah.
The packaging was horrible.
Yeah.
And they would package it up and you'd take it out and it was like wrapped up in paper. And so you'd sit there and you couldn't eat it. So, I mean, it depends on what you're doing too. Sometimes it's okay to take it home and that's not a big deal.
Sure. Well, think about this. Like they could have that restaurant you're talking about probably has great food. And when they present it to you, when you're in the restaurant, it probably looks beautiful. But then it's an afterthought of when somebody takes it home, but the presentation should be the same, shouldn't it?
It should. Now, depending on the kind of food, sometimes the presentation is not as important.
Sure.
Barbecue restaurants in general.
Yeah. I would say presentation is just being able to eat it.
Yeah.
Neatly.
Right, where you're not covered with the product. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah.
Have you been to Red Rock Canyon Grill?
100 Metcalf and
135th.
I haven't, and this is horrible to say because my niece was the marketing director for that chain of restaurants.
Okay,
but she's out of Oklahoma City.
Yep.
But
Hal or something Hal.
Yeah,
I can't remember the name, but they own multiple brands. Yep.
They had like 5 restaurants.
Yeah,
different brands that they owned, and she was doing the marketing for them because she asked us to help her with some ideas for marketing in Kansas City when that opened. So we were aware of it. I just haven't been there.
You need to go.
Okay.
Because everything we're talking about, oh my goodness, they nail it.
They nail it, okay.
From the people, and they've got every age of person you can think of, from a high schooler all the way up. I'm very, very picky about restaurants, and I can tell you the food is incredible.
That's great. And
the service, even to go, you're talking about packaging, they have a container for every little thing. Yep. It's all in there. So that's a restaurant that is really doing it right.
Well, that's great. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And Jack Stack is, I would say they do a great job too.
And there's others, but I'm not as fussy at some restaurants, but it surprises me when somebody's got, when I'll go in and for 2 people and spend $80 on a meal to go. Yeah. And I get home and it's kind of like, really? The food's okay. Food's good.
Yeah.
I just don't like the way it was presented.
Exactly.
It's stupid stuff like that just drives me nuts.
Well, to me, it's just a list of check boxes. Like, why can't we just get them all checked? And even just double checking their order, having somebody double check. I went to a restaurant, and I can't remember where it was, but it was something in the lines of they had a manager signing off on every single order that left on the receipt. Mm-hmm. They were basically saying, I'm putting my name on this, saying that you got everything you needed. Now, think about how much time that takes. Probably not that much. Maybe a little bit of extra labor costs, but I think it's worth it because now your reputation's there and you have a happy customer who's going to come back. And it's just a little extra time.
We do that at Kansas City Catering.
I bet you guys do.
When there's a prep sheet in the kitchen, there is somebody that checks the prep sheet. I mean, it's reviewed with the kitchen manager to make sure that he is going to prep all the food that's there. Somebody then checks it. So it's prepped, and we give everything a number or a day. So it might be TU2 if it's Tuesday. It's a second job on Tuesday. 3, 4, 5.
So you have you have a codes, and
everything's coded.
Wow.
And then, but he has to check off that all that food was prepared. So if you got a group of 100 people and you're supposed to have so much of this, and this, we have somebody that's checking to make sure that you send out this, and this. And then it goes to our operations department. So all that food's cooked, packaged, goes over there. They have to check it off of a sheet that it says that there's 2 pans of this in this equipment. So they check it off to make sure that they're taking the right amount of food that was fixed for them, that somebody didn't mess something up. And then, so everything's coded. So if you're going around and there might be 8 jobs going out today, everything's got a code or a number on it so you don't forget the pieces. But the operations people have to check off everything loaded on a truck.
That's beautiful to me. That is beautiful. That's the way I think that a business really should be run. And depending on even if it's catering or another business, that organization, I think, is really what ensures that long-term success, which you've really experienced. So unfortunately, we are out of time. But before we leave, before we end this, how can people find out more about your business?
Well, Kansas City Catering, we have a website. It's kansascitycatering.com. So It's pretty simple.
Yep.
We have a nice web page. You go to it, you can look at all kinds of menus. You can look at some events that we've done. There's some pictures there.
Yep.
When you call Kansas City Catering, you're always going to talk to a person. It's not a recording. You're always talking to a live person. And that person is knowledgeable enough to give you the information about whatever you want to talk to about. And if that's not even a salesperson, because only certain people answer the phone, then we'll let a salesperson call you back and they can actually start talking to you about your event, the size of your event, where you're going to do it. And we work in so many facilities, we know all the idiosyncrasies, ins and outs of these places. And we have people ask us to do things that we say, well, at this facility, we really can't do that. I mean, you may want us to do that, but we can't do it for these reasons. But we're very obliging, but we have a lot of information. My office manager, one thing she always told me, said, if I could have just gotten a nickel for all the free information you give out every day, you could have been a rich guy. So I mean, it's just.
Well, I think that's why you're where you are today, is giving that information.
Well, we
freely.
educate people.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if you don't know something about it, our first goal is to educate you.
Right.
You may not do business with us, but that's okay. At some point, I know the market. I know the competitors. At some point, you will do business with us. Because once you start trying the other competitors, maybe you thought our price is a little bit higher than it should have been. Whatever it is, you will come back to us. And I can tell you other stories about that. Oh, yeah. Some of our biggest events, they've tried, because when we got it, maybe they had already been doing it for years. We got it because they had used everybody else, and everybody else did a horrible job.
Yeah. And well, that's because you're detailed and you have everything, you have the follow through.
And once we got that piece of business, I won't tell you who it was, but we did that for 10 years. And they didn't even bid it out. It's a huge piece of business, because once they were satisfied that we did what we did, and we did everything we told them we were going to do, they didn't want to go anywhere else, because they'd used all the competitors.
Yep.
So,
Well, Mr. Simpson, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, thanks, Bronson. Appreciate
and
it.
And I know our listeners really appreciated all the insight and information and sharing your story. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.